Welcome back to our continued series on when to dial 911. In our first episode, we spoke with Eric Womack, our EMS quality specialist, from the EMS side of things on what it means when we have such a large amount of 911 calls and if they're frivolous, what that can mean to the EMS service. Well, today in part two, we're going to speak with Shanae Dunn. She is our communications supervisor with the Escambia County Emergency Communications, and from the 911 side of things, we're going to discuss what it means when to dial 911. We have a large number of low acuity calls and how that can impact our emergency communications specialists. So Shanae, I actually want to start with that first part about low acuity calls. What does that mean when we have such a large amount of low acuity calls, but specifically what is a low acuity call?
A low acuity call could be anywhere from like a toothache, a stubbed toe, laceration to the finger, chronic pain such as back pain for 3 months, those type of calls.
In EMS, they're dispatched to a large amount of calls per
Yes.
day, but from a communications side of things, like how often, or really on average, how many calls does emergency communications receive per day?
Anywhere from 500 to 600 calls a day in a 24-hour period.
So when you do receive a low acuity call, is the dispatcher able to offer any sort of advice to that caller, whether or not they need an ambulance or not?
We can't really offer advice such as persuading them one way or the other. If they're telling us, I don't know if this is an emergency, my chest is hurting, but I don't really want to go to the ER, we could suggest, why don't you go ahead and let me send an ambulance out, at least to check you. They'll be able to check to see, because you never know, if they're having a heart attack or not. But as far as any other advice, CPR, if someone's not breathing, we will initiate CPR. If someone's choking on food, we'll, instruct on how to do the Heimlich. There are things that we can do over the phone to help.
So we've been discussing the large amount of calls that communications receives. At any point, would a call be held due to the large volume of calls?
It's not held. If all of our call takers, once the call takers are all on calls, fire dispatcher will answer, and then the supervisor. Once all of them are on calls, a call will roll over to the sheriff's department. There are backup PSAP, sheriff's department, or over to city dispatch, and they will answer the call and send it back over to us.
So at what point during the day does emergency communications receive their highest volume of calls?
Oh, that really depends. Sometimes it starts as early as in the morning, between 8 and 10. We see a big increase of calls early afternoon, right around the evening time. 3 to 5 gets pretty busy, and it can stay up that way all night. I mean, it just really depends on the day.
What kind of impact can it have on emergency communications as a whole when there are so many calls coming in at once?
I guess depending on the kind of call, a lot of times we see ourselves hanging up with one call, putting notes in that call, and we're already on the next call. It does put a lot on you. But it's fast paced in there, you train to know how to deal with those type of situations and you move on.
And we've discussed this with EMS, but speaking on behalf of emergency communications, there's this idea that if I call 911, that means I'm going to go straight to the emergency room and I'm going to be seen right away. Right. But we have learned that that is certainly not the case, correct?
Correct. It does not mean you get to go right to the back and be seen in front of everyone else. They will still triage you. They prioritize the calls, and if it's low acuity, they will wheel you right out to the waiting room and you will wait.
And how might that influx of calls that come in, how could that impact an ambulance getting to your location in a timely manner?
Well, if you have an ambulance on a chronic back pain, once they make patient contact, they're there. They cannot leave the scene until either the patient refuses and they get that paperwork, so that takes, a little time to do that, or whether they transport and turn over patient care at the emergency room. So when you have ambulances tied up on that, it's keeping them from a true emergency.
And we're thinking of ways of how someone could call 911, if they should call 911, but what if I'm just not sure? Should I still dial 911?
Of course, you still call, let us know what's going on. Like I said, we can't really offer medical advice such as, I have a headache, can I take Tylenol? I can't tell you whether to take Tylenol or not. But if you call in, I'm having chest pain, I really don't want to go to the emergency room, do you think I should go? That's where we're gonna, why don't you let me send you an ambulance? They can check you out, and if you decide, you don't want to go at that point, then that's fine, but it's better to be safe than sorry in a situation like that.
And let's say this person thinks, I don't know if I have a call that's maybe a true emergency. What alternatives could someone use rather than dial 911 to take care of their issue at hand?
The hospitals you can call them and they have nurses that they can talk to over the phone. They can go to an urgent care. There's a lot of freestanding ERs going up around the county that they could go to.
But regardless, we had already mentioned it, but we'll go ahead and restate it. If you're not sure, you can still dial
Yes.
911.
Absolutely. If you're not sure, call. We're there 24/7 to answer your call.
24/7, 365. That includes holidays. Well, thank you so much for joining us on our series for when to dial 911. And again, like we've already said, if you have any questions, if you're not really sure, you can still dial 911. Our communications professionals are here to assist. They're always here to assist. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.